Dramily.com, unlimited drama series.
The phone buzzed at 2:47 a.m., and I knew my marriage was over. Not because of the call itself, but because Tessa didn't even flinch. She lay there, dead to the world, while her work phone lit up the bedroom like a neon sign advertising betrayal. I'm Mason Parrish, 38 years old, electrical engineer at Grady Tech Manufacturing. Most people call me Mace. I've been married to Tessa for 12 years, and for the last 6 months, I've been watching her slip away like voltage through a broken wire. The caller ID read, Rick Slater, at 2:47 a.m. I memorized the time, the name, the way Tessa's breathing never changed. When you're an engineer, you notice patterns, and the pattern here was crystal clear. My wife was cheating on me with the company's new corporate fixer. Rick Slater, 40 years old, ex-military, drove a blacked-out Range Rover like he was heading into combat instead of corporate meetings. He'd been hired 3 months ago to streamline operations, which apparently included streamlining his way into my wife's bed. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tessa was head of HR at her father's company, the same company where I'd worked for 15 years, climbing from junior technician to senior electrical engineer. I knew every wire, every circuit, every security camera in that building, and now I was going to use all of it. But first, I needed proof. Real proof. Not just late-night phone calls and the smell of unfamiliar cologne on her clothes. The next morning, Tessa rushed through breakfast, checking her phone every 30 seconds. Another emergency meeting? I asked, stirring my coffee. You know how it is, she said without looking up. Dad's been pushing these efficiency reviews. Rick thinks we can cut costs by 20% if we restructure the maintenance department. Rick thinks. Everything was Rick thinks these days. Funny, I said. I talked to Donnie yesterday. He's the union rep for maintenance. He said there haven't been any efficiency reviews scheduled. Tessa's fingers froze over her phone screen for just a second, just long enough for me to catch it. Well, maybe they're preliminary discussions, she said. You know how corporate planning works. I knew exactly how corporate planning worked. I also knew that Tessa's father, Walter Grady, never made moves without documentation. The man documented his lunch orders. After Tessa left, I called my sister Shelby. She worked in the accounting department at Grady Tech, 3 floors up from my workshop. Hey, Mace, what's up? I need a favor. Can you check the conference room schedules for the last month? See if there have been any late meetings involving Tessa and Rick Slater. Shelby was quiet for a moment. Mace, are you sure you want to know? I'm sure. Give me an hour. An hour later, Shelby called back. There haven't been any official meetings between Tessa and Rick after 5 p.m. in the past month. But the parking garage security logs show both their cars staying until after 8 p.m., at least 12 times. 12 times. 12 nights when Tessa came home late, claiming emergency meetings that never existed. There's something else, Shelby said. I was talking to Quinn from HR yesterday. She made some joke about Tessa training Rick for the top job, on and off the clock. I thought it was just office gossip, but now, Quinn Martinez was Tessa's best friend and deputy in HR. If she was making jokes about Tessa's affair, it wasn't a secret anymore. It was office entertainment. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done in 15 years at Grady Tech. I used my security clearance for personal reasons. The building's security system was something I'd helped design and install. Every badge swipe, every camera angle, every electronic lock, I knew the system better than anyone, including the fact that the parking garage cameras had audio recording capabilities that most people didn't know about. I pulled the footage from the previous Thursday night. Tessa's car, a white BMW, parked next to Rick's Range Rover on level B2. At 8:23 p.m., they both got out of their cars. And then Rick pressed Tessa against the concrete wall and kissed her like the world was ending. The audio picked up everything. We need to be more careful, Tessa said, breathless. Your husband's just a technician, Rick replied. He's not going to figure anything out. Besides, once your father promotes me to VP, we can make this official. What about Mason? What about him? You said yourself he's going nowhere. Still in the same job he had 5 years ago, still happy to play with wires, while real men make real decisions. I watched my wife laugh at that. Actually laugh. I saved the video to 3 different secure drives, then sat in my truck in the employee parking lot for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Tessa thought I was going nowhere. Rick thought I was just a technician who played with wires. They were about to learn what this technician could do when he stopped playing. The first step was Walter Grady. Tessa's father was a hard man who'd built his company from nothing. He valued loyalty above everything else, and he had zero tolerance for employees who mixed business with pleasure. I didn't go to his office. That would have looked like I was trying to cause trouble. Instead, I did something much simpler. I called the company's main switchboard and asked to be transferred to Walter's direct line. When his secretary answered, I said, "This is Mason Parrish from engineering. I need to speak with Mr. Grady about a security issue." Walter took the call within 2 minutes. "Mason, what's the problem?" "Sir, I'd rather not discuss this over the phone. Can we meet this afternoon?" "Come up now." Walter's office occupied the entire northwest corner of the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the city, and the walls were covered with photos of company milestones and family memories, including several pictures of Tessa's wedding day. "Sit down, Mason. What's this about?" I handed him a USB drive. "I think you should see this before I explain anything." Walter plugged the drive into his computer and watched the parking garage footage. His face didn't change expression, but his knuckles went white as he gripped his desk. When the video ended, he was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you known?" he asked. "I suspected for months. I confirmed it yesterday." "What do you want me to do about it?" "Nothing, sir. This is a family matter between Tessa and me." "But Rick Slater is discussing company promotions and business decisions in the context of a personal relationship with your daughter." "I thought you should know." Walter nodded slowly. "You're right. I should know." He looked at me directly. "What are you going to do about your marriage?" "I'm going to end it. But I wanted you to hear this from me first, not from office gossip." "I appreciate that." Walter stood up and walked to the window. Rick Slater was supposed to present his efficiency recommendations to the board next week. I think that presentation just got canceled. I left Walter's office and went back to work. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The explosion happened the next morning. I was in the workshop reviewing electrical schematics when Donnie burst through the door. "Holy hell, Mace, did you see what happened upstairs?" "What are you talking about?" "Your wife just got fired. Security escorted her out 20 minutes ago." I set down my coffee cup very carefully. "What?" "Walter called an emergency meeting with all the department heads. Tessa and Rick were both there." Nobody knows exactly what was said, but people heard shouting. Then Walter announced that Tessa was being terminated for conduct incompatible with company values, and Rick was being terminated for violation of professional ethics. Donnie sat down on a workbench. "But here's the crazy part. Walter promoted your sister Shelby to head of HR, effective immediately. Apparently, she's been quietly handling half of Tessa's workload for the past year anyway. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt empty." "There's more," Donnie said. "Quinn Martinez is telling everyone that Tessa tried to argue with her father in front of the entire board. Said some things that can't be taken back." "Like what?" "Like accusing him of sabotaging her career out of jealousy, and saying that Rick was twice the businessman Walter ever was." I closed my eyes. Tessa had always been impulsive when she was angry, but challenging her father in front of the board was career suicide. Where's she now? Gone. Security walked her to her car and made sure she left the property. Rick, too. My phone buzzed, a text from Tessa. "We need to talk. Come home now." I looked at Donnie. "I guess I'm going home." Home. "You want me to come with you?" "No. This is something I need to handle alone." The drive home took 15 minutes. 15 minutes to prepare for a conversation that would end my marriage and probably destroy what was left of my relationship with Tessa's family. But when I walked into our house, Tessa wasn't angry. She was crying. She sat at the kitchen table, still in her business suit. Makeup streaked down her cheeks. Her company laptop and badge were in a cardboard box by the door. "How could you do this to me?" she asked without looking up. "I didn't do anything to you, Tessa. You did this to yourself. You went to my father. You showed him that video." "Yes, I did." She finally looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Before the ambition consumed her, before Rick Slater, before everything went wrong. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you were cheating on me. Because you were lying to me every day. Because you were planning a future with another man while pretending to be my wife. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen, Tessa? Were you going to ask for a divorce, or were you just going to keep lying until Rick got his promotion?" She didn't answer, which was an answer in itself. I sat down across from her. "I want a divorce. I've already talked to a lawyer. Mason, please, we can work this out. Rick doesn't mean anything to me. It was just what? Just sex? Just ambition? Just 12 nights in the parking garage talking about how I'm going nowhere?" Her face went pale. "You heard that?" "I heard everything." We sat in silence for several minutes. Outside, I could hear our neighbor mowing his lawn, the sound of normal life continuing while mine fell apart. "What happens now?" Tessa asked. "Now you find somewhere else to live. The divorce papers will be filed Monday morning. We'll split everything fairly, but I'm keeping the house. And Rick? What about Rick? Are you going to do anything else to him?" I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and realized she was afraid. Not of me, exactly, but of what I might be capable of. Rick Slater got himself fired by sleeping with the boss's daughter and discussing company business during pillow talk. I didn't have to do anything else to him. But that wasn't entirely true. Rick Slater had called me a technician who played with wires, a man going nowhere. He'd laughed about it with my wife. I wasn't done with Rick Slater. Not yet. Tessa moved out that weekend. She rented a small apartment across town and took only her personal belongings. We barely spoke during the process, communicating mostly through lawyers. The divorce proceedings were straightforward. No children, no major assets except the house, no contested property. Tessa didn't fight me on anything, probably because she knew that fighting would mean more public exposure of her affair. But Rick Slater wasn't content to disappear quietly. 3 weeks after getting fired, he started calling me. First, it was attempts at reconciliation. "Mason, we need to talk. Man to man." I hung up. Then, it escalated to threats. "You cost me my job, you son of a bitch. You have no idea what you've started." I saved the voicemails and forwarded them to my lawyer. Finally, Rick tried a different approach. He showed up at my house on a Saturday morning, parked in my driveway like he belonged there. I watched him from the kitchen window as he got out of his Range Rover and walked to my front door. He was dressed casually, jeans and a polo shirt, but he moved with the aggressive confidence of someone accustomed to getting his way. The doorbell rang. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "What do you want, Rick?" "I want to talk. 5 minutes." "You've got 2. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think you won something here, don't you? You think destroying my career and breaking up your marriage makes you some kind of hero? I think you destroyed your own career by sleeping with your boss's daughter. I just provided the documentation." "Documentation?" Rick stepped closer. "You mean spying. You mean using company resources to stalk your own wife. I mean using security footage to document employee misconduct, which, as a senior engineer with security clearance, I'm authorized to do." Rick's smile faded. "You're a petty little man, Mason. You always were. Tessa told me how you held her back, how you never had any ambition, any drive to be something more than a glorified electrician. And yet, I'm the one who still has a job." That hit home. Rick's face flushed red. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is." I closed the door and watched through the window as he got back in his Range Rover and drove away. But Rick was right about one thing. It wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a call from Shelby. Mace, we have a problem. Rick Slater has been calling clients, trying to poach business. He's telling them that Grady Tech is financially unstable and that he can provide the same services through a consulting firm. Is that legal? Probably not. He signed a non-compete agreement, but he's also spreading rumors about you specifically, saying you're emotionally unstable, that you can't be trusted with sensitive projects. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of rumors? He's claiming that you used your security access to spy on employees, that you're a security risk. He's trying to get you fired, Mace. Rick Slater wasn't just trying to rebuild his career. He was trying to destroy mine. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Walter Grady. Mason, I want you to know that Rick Slater's accusations are completely without merit. You acted appropriately in bringing the security footage to my attention, and your job is not in jeopardy. Thank you, sir.
I deleted her number! You deleted it? She tagged you in a photo an hour ago. My everything thing with a...
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
However, Rick's attempts to damage our business relationships are becoming a serious problem. Our legal team is preparing a cease and desist order, but I wanted to ask you directly, is there anything else you can tell me about Rick that might help us build a stronger case? I thought about that question for a long moment. Walter was asking if I had more ammunition against Rick Slater, and as it happened, I did. Sir, I'd like permission to conduct a more thorough review of Rick's activities while he was employed here. If he's trying to damage the company now, there might be evidence that he was planning this while he was still on the payroll. Walter nodded. You have my permission. And Mason, if you find anything actionable, I want to know immediately. That night, I went back to the office. The building was empty except for security guards, and my badge gave me access to every floor, every server room, every database. Rick Slater had been careless. Very careless. His company computer, which had been wiped and returned to IT, still had recoverable data in the temporary files, including email drafts that were never sent but were automatically saved. Email drafts to competitors offering to sell Grady Tech's client list and project specifications. Email drafts to potential investors, outlining a business plan that was essentially a copy of Grady Tech's 5-year strategic plan. And most damaging of all, email drafts to Tessa, discussing their plan to push Walter into early retirement so that Rick could take over the company with Tessa as his partner. It wasn't just an affair. It was corporate espionage and conspiracy. I printed everything, made digital copies, and prepared a comprehensive report. But before I turned it over to Walter, I decided to give Rick one last chance to walk away quietly. I called him the next morning. Rick, this is Mason Parrish. What the hell do you want? I want to offer you a deal. Stop calling our clients. Stop spreading rumors about me. And leave town. Do that. And this ends here. Rick laughed. You're in no position to make deals, Mason. By the time I'm done, you'll be lucky to get a job fixing toasters. I found your emails, Rick. The line went quiet. What emails? The ones where you plan to sell our client list to competitors. The ones where you outlined stealing our strategic plan. The ones where you and Tessa discussed forcing Walter into retirement. I could hear Rick breathing heavily on the other end of the line. You're bluffing. Draft email to Pinnacle Industries dated March 15th. Attached, please find the complete client specifications for the Morrison account. As discussed, my consulting rate is $500 per hour, plus a 20% finder's fee for any contracts you secure using this information. Rick was quiet for a long moment. What do you want? He finally asked. I want you to disappear. Leave town, start over somewhere else, and never contact anyone from Grady Tech again. Do that, and these emails stay between us. And if I don't, then I turn everything over to Walter Grady and the FBI. Corporate espionage is a federal crime, Rick. You're looking at 5 to 10 years in prison. The line went dead. I waited 3 days. Rick didn't call any more clients. He didn't spread any more rumors. But he also didn't leave town. Instead, he made one final desperate play. He went to Tessa. I found out about their meeting from Quinn Martinez, of all people. Tessa's former best friend called me at work, sounding nervous. Mason, I think you should know that Rick contacted Tessa yesterday. They met at Murphy's bar downtown. Why are you telling me this? Because I was there. I saw them together. Quinn paused. Rick is planning something, Mason. Something bad. He kept talking about how you'd ruined both their lives and how it was time for payback. What kind of payback? He wants Tessa to file a restraining order against you, claim that you've been stalking her, threatening her. He thinks if he can get you arrested, it will discredit anything you might say about him. I felt my blood pressure spike. Is Tessa going along with this? I don't know. She was drinking pretty heavily. But Mason, there's something else. Rick isn't just angry about losing his job. He's broke. Apparently he owes money to some very unpleasant people, and he was counting on that promotion to pay them back. How much money? I heard him tell Tessa it was over $100,000. Gambling debts. After Quinn hung up, I sat in my office and tried to think clearly. Rick Slater was desperate, which made him dangerous. He was planning to frame me for stalking, which could cost me my job and possibly land me in jail. But Rick had made one critical mistake. He'd involved Tessa in his scheme, and Tessa had never been good at keeping secrets. I called my lawyer and told him to expect a false restraining order petition. Then I called Walter Grady and scheduled another meeting. Sir, Rick Slater is planning to escalate his attacks on the company. I think it's time to turn over everything I've found to the authorities. Walter reviewed the evidence I'd compiled. The recovered emails, the client contact logs, the strategic plan theft. His face grew darker with each page. This is enough to destroy him, Walter said. Corporate espionage, attempted fraud, conspiracy. He'll go to prison. Yes, sir. And my daughter was involved in this? That was the question I'd been dreading. The emails suggest that Tessa was aware of Rick's plans to push you into early retirement. But there's no evidence that she knew about the client list or the strategic plan theft. Walter was quiet for a long moment. Tessa made her choices. She'll have to live with the consequences. The next morning, FBI agents arrested Rick Slater at his apartment. The charges included corporate espionage, attempted fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft of trade secrets. The local news covered the story, describing Rick as a disgraced former executive who had tried to steal proprietary information from his former employer. Tessa called me that afternoon, crying, "They arrested Rick. The FBI arrested him." I know. Did you do this? Rick did this to himself when he decided to steal company secrets and sell them to competitors. But you're the one who found the evidence. Yes, I am. Tessa was quiet for a moment. What's going to happen to me? Nothing, as long as you stay away from Rick and stop trying to cause problems for me or the company. I wasn't trying to cause problems. You were planning to file a false restraining order against me. Quinn told me about your meeting at Murphy's bar. I could hear Tessa crying harder. I'm sorry, Mason. I'm so sorry about everything. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. Rick Slater pled guilty to federal charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The judge also ordered him to pay restitution to Grady Tech for the attempted theft of trade secrets. Tessa moved to another state, taking a job with a small marketing firm. We finalized our divorce 6 months later, and I haven't spoken to her since. Walter Grady promoted me to chief of engineering and gave me a substantial raise. He also made it clear that my actions had saved the company from potentially millions of dollars in losses. You could have just divorced your wife quietly, he told me. Instead, you protected the business and everyone who works here. That's the kind of loyalty I value. 6 months after Rick's arrest, I was working late in my office when the security desk called. Mr. Parrish, there's someone here to see you. Says his name is Tony Marconi. I didn't recognize the name, but something about the guard's tone made me curious. Send him up. Tony Marconi was a small, well-dressed man in his 60s. He walked into my office with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being taken seriously. Mr. Parrish, thank you for seeing me. I represent certain business interests that had a financial relationship with Rick Slater. I gestured for him to sit down. What kind of business interests? The kind that don't like it when people owe them money and then go to prison instead of paying it back. I felt a chill run down my spine. How much money are we talking about? $137,000, plus interest. I don't see how that's my problem. Tony smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Rick Slater told us that you were responsible for his arrest, that you framed him to get revenge for sleeping with your wife. Rick Slater was arrested for corporate espionage and fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Maybe so. But the fact remains that our money is gone, and Rick says it's your fault. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly are you asking me to do about it? We're asking you to make good on Rick's debt. Consider it a gesture of goodwill. And if I refuse? Tony's smile widened. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. After Tony left, I sat in my office for a long time thinking. Rick Slater was in prison, but he was still trying to destroy my life. This time, he'd involved people who wouldn't be satisfied with legal remedies. I called Walter Grady at home. Sir, we have a new problem. I explained about Tony Marconi's visit. Walter listened without interruption. How do you want to handle this? He asked. I have an idea, but I'll need your permission to access some company resources. Whatever you need. The next morning, I called Tony Marconi. Mr. Marconi, this is Mason Parrish. I've reconsidered your offer. Smart man, when can we expect payment? I can have the money by Friday, but I want to meet with your boss first, face to face. That's not how we usually do business. It's how I do business. $137,000 is a lot of money. I want to make sure this transaction ends Rick Slater's debt permanently. Tony was quiet for a moment. I'll make some calls. That afternoon, Tony called back with an address. Tomorrow, 8 p.m., come alone. The address was a restaurant in Little Italy, the kind of place where the menu wasn't posted and the waiters didn't write anything down. I arrived exactly at 8 p.m., wearing my best suit and carrying a briefcase. Tony met me at the door and led me to a private dining room in the back. 3 men were seated at a round table, an elderly man in an expensive suit, a younger man who looked like he spent a lot of time in the gym, and Tony. The elderly man gestured for me to sit down. Mr. Parrish, I'm Vincent Torino. Tony tells me you're willing to settle Rick Slater's debt. That's correct. May I ask why? Rick Slater isn't your responsibility. I opened my briefcase and removed a manila folder. Because Rick Slater cost me my marriage and nearly cost me my career. But more importantly, he stole from my company and tried to sell proprietary information to our competitors. I handed the folder to Vincent. These are copies of the emails and documents that sent Rick to prison. I thought you might be interested in seeing exactly what kind of man you were doing business with. Vincent reviewed the documents carefully. His expression grew darker with each page. Rick was planning to steal trade secrets and sell them? Yes. He was also planning to defraud his employer and manipulate a family business to serve his own interests. Vincent closed the folder and looked at me directly. Mr. Parrish, men like Rick Slater give all of us a bad name. They have no honor, no respect for the people who trust them. He pushed the folder back across the table. Keep your money. Rick Slater's debt is forgiven. But not because of anything you've done. Because a man who steals from his own employer and betrays his business partners isn't worth the effort it would take to collect from him. Vincent stood up, and the meeting was over. One more thing, he said as I reached the door. If Rick Slater ever gets out of prison and causes you any more problems, you let Tony know. We don't forget people who show us respect. I walked out of that restaurant feeling lighter than I had in months. Rick Slater's last attempt to destroy my life had backfired spectacularly. But the story wasn't over yet. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the federal prosecutor who had handled Rick's case. Mr. Parrish, I wanted to let you know that Rick Slater has been requesting meetings with our office. He claims to have information about organized crime activities. What kind of information? He's trying to trade details about his gambling debts for a reduced sentence. The problem is, we're not interested in his information, and his credibility is essentially zero. I thought about Vincent Torino's words. We don't forget people who show us respect. Is there anything I need to do about this? No. Rick's requests have been denied. He'll serve his full sentence. I just wanted you to know in case he tries to contact you. Rick never contacted me. But 6 months later, I heard through the prison grapevine that he'd been transferred to solitary confinement after an incident with other inmates. Apparently, Word had gotten around that Rick was trying to cooperate with federal investigators. In prison, that kind of reputation can be hazardous to your health. Rick Slater served 3.5 years of his 4-year sentence. When he was released, he moved to another state and disappeared from my life completely. Tessa remarried 2 years after our divorce. Her new husband is an accountant from Ohio, a quiet man who seems content to let her be the ambitious one in the relationship. They have a daughter now. I never remarried, but I'm not bitter about it. I learned something important from my marriage to Tessa. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who understand you the least. Walter Grady retired last year and turned the company over to a management team that includes me as Chief Technology Officer. The business is thriving, and I've built a team of engineers who share my commitment to excellence. Last month, I got an unexpected visitor at the office. Quinn Martinez, Tessa's former best friend, stopped by to see me. "Mason, I wanted to apologize," she said. For not telling you about Tessa's affair sooner, for going along with her lies." "You don't owe me an apology, Quinn. You were trying to be a good friend." "No, I was being a coward. I knew what Tessa was doing was wrong, and I should have said something." Quinn looked older, more serious than I remembered. "I learned something from watching what happened to you and Tessa. Loyalty means telling people the truth, even when it's painful, especially when it's painful." After Quinn left, I thought about her words. Loyalty means telling people the truth. That's exactly what I'd done. I'd told Walter the truth about his daughter's affair. I'd told the FBI the truth about Rick's crimes. I'd told Vincent Torino the truth about Rick's character. And in